Dear T'Challa, my sovereign nation seeks your assistance in keeping its sovereignty in these uncertain times. I am deeply troubled by the words used by Mr. Richard Haass, the chairman of the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations and the author of the West's Foreign Relations Bible, The World, A Brief Introduction. You and I know such organizations as the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations were created and sponsored by the ruling commercial class to ensure they can plunder and loot the resources of the conquered and vanquished, much like their predecessors, the British East India Trading Company, the Dutch East India Company, the Portuguese Estado de India, and Spain's the Royal Barcelona Trading Company to the Indies. The modern-day companies like Rahcon and others of its ilk have replaced those first true multinationals. Mr. Richard Haass in a May 30 interview said, to paraphrase, in effect that he and his so-called spiritually, morally, and powerfully exceptional kind must run ramshackle over the sovereignty of any nation that does not fall in line to the crack of their whip in a world order where the laws and codes of behavior are made by these so-called exceptional people who 99.1% of the world know nothing about, and any sovereign nation that shows dissent will be destroyed. My neighboring nation Verde was recently destroyed this past week. The U.S. Treasury placed sanctions on Verde, and with a stroke of the Treasury chairman's pen on the dotted lines of the sanction documents, all the wire transfer intermediary banks like JP Morgan, Serpo blockchains and various online financial hubs were banned from processing transactions from any source in Verde. The IMF and other United Nations affiliate groups are also banned from lending funds to the government of Verde to keep its public health care, utilities, and infrastructure afloat. Also, any nation that trades with Verde will face the same sanctions. The reason for this sad state of affairs is because Verde changed its colonial-dated land laws that prevented one group from selling land to another group. The party most aggrieved by the change in the law happened to be the commercial elite of Verde, and they have associations in America and England which purchase raw materials cheaply from Verde. These raw materials make up 98% of the supply on the world market. Even the computer that I write this letter on has components made from Verde's raw materials. Of course, the Verde government nationalized the raw materials, but they cannot get it out to market. Such is the fate of small sovereign states like my country. We were given independence in words only from the colonial powers, when in fact the land rights were still in the hands of the colonial puppets that filled the power vacuum when the motherland's flag came down the pole on Independence Night. We were given the veil of power over our affairs when it was just an illusion. The United Nations and the Commonwealth are all front groups for the same people. I know that in your travels as a national leader and a member of the superhuman community that you have gone up against Hydra. In my time as a former foreign affairs minister before I became prime minister, I heard rumors of a brotherhood. Men, women, and legal entities that work separately but under the same code of dominance of the vital raw materials for their profit. They have used sterilization of the women in my country to remove any potential rebellious youths from ever rising up against and removing the veil. Somehow I got through the fingers of the family planning scheme that was directed specifically at my country under the NSSM 200 State Department report that was done by one Mr. Kissinger. I now understand that Mr. Kissinger has left the Earth and now resides somewhere in our solar system. My country was further targeted for propaganda, where popular films made in the US, England and France depicted my nation as dilapidated and corrupted, therefore in need of the so-called morally superior intervention of agents from these larger states. We are helpless to fight back in this one-sided propaganda war. My attempts to build ties with Russia, China, Bilderberg, and Krakow have failed because those countries want to use my nation as a pawn in their power struggle on the world stage. I am doing what I can with education and e-commerce investments in my nation to wean the economy off being a price taker on the international commodity markets. I want to trade with the alien empires outside of the solar system as well. I want to meet with you formally or informally depending on your schedule to discuss these matters. Please get back to me. Yours truly Mr. Salvio Thange, Prime Minister of Lolden. T'Challa finished the third read of the letter and he looked at the time stamp on when the document was received, which was 24 hours ago. In that 24 hours T'Challa found out that Mr. Salvio Thange was assassinated. He was 33 years old and the youngest Prime Minister of his country. The opposition leader declared himself the leader of the nation, and the United States, England, and Germany have recognized the opposition leader as the Prime Minister of Lolden. Thange's followers have promised to fight both legally and militarily, and the country seems destined for a civil war. The U.S. Treasury has threatened sanctions on the country if the opposition leader is harmed, and any nation that aids Thange's followers will be sanctioned. The U.S. Council on Foreign Relations has declared Lolden a failed state that runs the risks of housing threats to the free world, and military interventions are necessary to put in a democratic government and for multinationals to return to the country. T'Challa was enraged and unconsciously he broke the table when he allowed his superhuman strength to come out. "Calm yourself," he whispered. Conveniently T'Challa was about to meet Mr. Richard Haas, Masters in the Brotherhood, and kill them all. He messaged Didelaine the diviner and asked him if he was ready for the battle royal for leadership of the Brotherhood, and the demigod replied yes. 3 hours later T'Challa and Didelaine were in the landlocked nation of Switzerland in Europe, where the Brotherhood's inner council had gathered for the tournament in the forest where they traditionally made sacrifices to gods like Calypso before their meetings. Abner Little, the curator of the Cecil Rhodes Vault, placed the Great Bird of Zimbabwe in the center of the gathering. The jeweled object grew from 5 feet to 12 feet and it opened its beak, which touched the ground. Kissinger walked into the mouth of the bird and vanished. The other members of the Brotherhood followed him. T'Challa and Didelaine were the last to enter.